Reporting from Colorado, this is Tommy with the brand new 2022 Mazda CX-5 Signature. And in this video, we are going to review two different cars from two different sides of the country and find out which one is best.
Today, you join me in beautiful, sunny, warm Santa Barbara to take a look at the brand new Mazda CX-50. This is Mazda's new, more rugged, more lifestyle-oriented crossover.
But it's important to note that the CX-50 is not going to be replacing the CX-5. We've kind of got two different flavors going on here. They're going to be built at the same time and they're going to be sold at the same time. Let's get into the engines. The CX-5 has a couple of different engine choices. There's a naturally aspirated model and a turbo model like this one. Now the turbo is officially rated at 227 horsepower and 310 pound-feet of torque. However, Mazda says that if you run this vehicle on 93 octane, you get additional power, something like 256 horsepower and slightly more torque as well. Now the towing capacity on the CX-5, 2,000 pounds, so not a huge amount of towing capacity, and the fuel economy, 24 mpg combined on this turbo model.
Under the hood of the CX-50, you get one of two different engines. Both are 2.5 liters. You can have a turbo or a non-turbo. If you get the base engine without the turbo, you'll have 187 horsepower and 186 pound-feet of torque. If you do opt for the turbo, like this model, that boosts you up to 256 horsepower and 320 pound-feet of torque. However, that's only if you're running the car on premium fuel. If you don't run the car on premium fuel, the car will derate itself down to 227 horsepower and 310 pound-feet of torque. And it's constantly measuring different metrics about the fuel and about your ambient temperature, all of that to make sure that no matter which fuel you run, the car and the engine will be safe from any damage. So you don't have to run premium fuel, but it will get you some extra power. Both engines are mated to a 6-speed automatic transmission, and all-wheel drive is standard on every model of the CX-50. Fuel mileage with the base non-turbo engine is 24 city, 30 highway, and 27 combined. And if you do opt for the turbo, that drops your fuel economy down to 23 city, 29 highway, and 25 combined. And there are a few different running engine modes for this vehicle. You have sport, off-road, and towing in addition to normal mode. And what towing mode gets you is a towing capacity of 3,500 pounds on this turbo model and only 2,000 pounds on the base engine.
Let's see how the CX-5 accelerates. I've got it in a sport mode. I'm going to floor it. A little bit of delay, and then there is the power. Now I do think it's interesting. The red line is right around 6,500 RPM, but it shifts pretty consistently even in sport mode at like 5,000. Let me go into the manual setting. Let's see if we can bring it all the way up to red line. Floored, power really comes in nicely. I don't know, it shifts automatically even in sport mode, right around 5,500 RPM, and the engine is up to temperature. But regardless, a very, very healthy performer with a lot of grunt.
This being a turbo model of the CX-50, I am going to take advantage of the full 256 horsepower. So I'm in sport mode right now, pulling out onto the highway, gonna full throttle it. It's nice, smooth, torquey acceleration. It's not bad. The engine sound, you know, it's okay. One thing that I do think is actually pretty cool is that you can hear some turbo noise when you let off. Hear it release that pressure. That sounds pretty good. Yeah, this is not like it's not a sports car, but it's torquey, gets you up to speed, no problem. Even here in the mountains heading uphill, there's obviously a little bit of lag because it is turbocharged. You have to wait a moment for that power, but the nice thing about having a 6-speed transmission rather than an 8-speed or a 10-speed is that you tend to be closer to the gear that you actually want to be in. So the powertrain feels good in this car, even if it is a little bit old school.
The Mazda CX-5 signature is 180.1 inches long. The CX-5 is 72.6 inches wide with mirrors folded in, or 83.3 inches wide with the mirrors folded out. The CX-5 signature is 65.6 inches tall, and the curb weight on this model right around 3,800 pounds. Now the overall design is very swoopy, very elegant, very sporty on this CX-5 signature, whereas the CX-50 is trying to be rugged and off-roady. This model, not going for that look whatsoever. In fact, for 2022 on the signature trim, they even body colored all the trim like around the wheel wells, so it's all one single color. You don't have that black molding. I think it looks pretty good. Do I think it looks as good as the CX-50? You know, usually I'm not a big fan of cladding, but that CX-50 is really cool. I think it looks better than this CX-5. Even though this one's a little bit more sporty with the dual exhaust and the big wheels, that's the one to get from a design standpoint.
The exterior styling of the CX-50 is more rugged in its appearance, with plastic cladding at the bottom of the front bumper and around the wheel arches. And one of my favorite details are these turn signal lights that glow amber when you have the running lights on. That has a very cool appearance to it that makes this car seem just a little bit more off-roady. There's also the large fender flares with these vents at the front and back, and that gives this car the appearance of having almost like an aftermarket wide body kit. It really changes the stance of this vehicle and gives it that more sporty, capable look. What's not so capable and rugged are these 20-inch wheels that come standard on all turbo models and standard on the top naturally aspirated model. If you get a base model, you'll have 17-inch wheels instead. Thankfully, if you do want a more capable but still spec'd out version of the CX-50, there's a Meridian edition coming down the line that will have 18-inch wheels with all-terrain tires, as well as a roof rack and a hood graphic. The CX-50 is a relatively large crossover with an overall length of 186 inches, a width of 81 inches, and a height of 64. And this turbo model weighs in at just over 3,900 pounds. Let's take a look at the ride and handling on the CX-50 now that we've found some windy roads. And this car is surprisingly stiff. It's not bad, it's not a problem. And actually on a road like this that's a little bit more twisty, it's kind of a nice thing. But unless we're on butter smooth pavement like what you see here, it's maybe not the most floaty, comfortable thing, and certainly doesn't feel like an off-roader. Once again, that's not so bad when you're where we are right now, which is a fun, twisty road. And the torque from this turbo engine, can't say enough how much I'm enjoying that. These more street-focused tires on this 20-inch wheel definitely offer good feedback, better than the feedback that you're going to get on the Meridian Edition if you choose to go for that. That more all-terrain Falcon Wild Peak tire is not gonna be quite as good for this kind of driving, which realistically is probably the kind of driving that most people who buy a car like this are going to spend most of their time doing. But overall, comfortable, it drives well, it's an easy car to live with, an easy car to jump into and get used to. Mazda does a really good job of making the cars feel natural. The inputs are not hard to get used to. It's just a nice, pleasant vehicle to be in. The CX-50 does use a torsion beam rear end, which for an enthusiast on-road driving, it's probably not going to be your first choice, but it does overall well for a vehicle that's meant to be more on the rugged side. It's competent.
Compared to the CX-50 that Kase is driving, this Mazda, the CX-5, has a much more sophisticated rear suspension setup. So it's fully independent, and this thing does handle absolutely beautifully. The steering is practically perfect. Some of the best crossover steering in the industry. The damping is perfect. Not a lot of body roll for what is a small crossover. It really handles beautifully on the road. The CX-5 interior, so elegant. It's amazing that Mazda was able to do an interior that doesn't only compete with like Toyota, Nissan, but I think actually competes with vehicles like Lexus, Infiniti, even BMW and Mercedes. Everything you touch feels fantastic. The seat materials, the steering wheel, the design is elegant. This is an incredible interior. Inside the CX-5 Signature, you'll find a 10.25-inch screen with the biggest navigation zoom out I have ever seen. And of course, you'll find all the luxuries you'd expect in a premium vehicle, including a heated steering wheel, heated seats, and dual-zone automatic climate control with ventilated seats. And lastly, we have a very nice set of gauges, very analog with a digital center portion. So we've got our tachometer there on the left, we've got a speedometer in the middle, and then analog fuel and temp gauges. Power liftgate in the CX-5 Signature, and we've got 31 cubic feet worth of space behind the second row, and nearly 60 when you fold it down. And unlike the CX-50 that is assembled here in the US, the CX-5 is assembled in Hiroshima, Japan.
Inside of the CX-50 is where you'll find some of this car's best features, including this 10.25-inch display that comes standard on all but the base model car. What does come standard on all versions of the car is wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, as well as tons of safety tech, including blind spot monitoring, lane keep assist, radar cruise control, and automatic emergency braking. Lots of things that you would expect out of a vehicle like this. Also, the fit and finish is good. The steering wheel feels nice, the buttons are all quality, they have good tactile feel to them, and a lot of great materials on the door cards as well as the seats. Good stitching, good upholstery, a lot of soft touch. This whole top piece of the dashboard, that's all soft touch. The section right below the vents here is also nice stitched leather. One thing that I don't love in this interior is the placement of the center vent. I can tell that they're trying to do the same style vent that integrates into the dashboard like you see on a lot of modern cars, but it looks a little bit out of place. It's not the best execution of that style vent. There's also some cheaper plastics on some of the parts of the car that you won't interact with as often, but overall, generally really nice materials, and especially on those touch points that you interact with often. As for using this screen setup, you primarily control it with this scroll wheel here in the center. It's not the most intuitive system, but it's far from the worst on the market, and having wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto is a big bonus. This car is also featuring Mazda Connect, and that gets you a remote start and lock and unlock feature, as well as Wi-Fi in your car, and you can use your app to find your vehicle. The gauge cluster is simple and easy to read. You have your tachometer all the way on the left, and your speedometer in the center, temperature, and then fuel as you move to the right. And when you switch modes, the gauges change their appearance slightly. All but the base 2 models of this car come standard with heated seats in the front, as well as a power liftgate. And all but the base 3 models of this car come standard with a moonroof that has a power tilt and slide sunroof in the front. The CX-50 has 31 cubic feet of cargo space behind the rear seats, and if you do fold them down, you will get 56 cubic feet of cargo space. You can see a 60-40 split on the seats here, and they don't fold quite completely flat, but pretty close to it. Now we have a chance to test out the CX-50 off-road, and I say off-road, this is obviously not a super intense trail or anything. This is a gravel road with some bumps in it, and that's what most people are going to use a vehicle like this on. You're not picking this out of a lineup of new cars in order to go to Moab and do the craziest, hardest trails that are out there. It's not a Jeep, it's not a 4Runner. But if you have a mountain bike or skis and you want to get to the mountains, you want to drive up a trailhead and be able to go do some outdoor sports, go do some camping, this is the kind of vehicle that most people, at least in our state of Colorado, use to do those things. Because they can drive them every day, and then you're not burning as much fuel as you would in a dedicated off-roader, but it will still get you to where you need to go. And that's what this is doing without a problem. Really the biggest issue with it is that it's sprung a little hard, and that's great when you're on pavement. It makes a car handle better on the road, but it is a little bit stiff. You can feel the shape of the ground that you're rolling over, and the same is true even on pavement. These tires as well are definitely not meant for off-roading. This whole 20-inch wheel package is clearly meant for the type of driving that Mazda expects the customer to do in this car, and that's primarily on-road driving. If you needed to do a little bit of the kind of thing that we're doing, these tires in this car and its all-wheel drive system are perfectly capable of doing that. But again, it's just not an off-roader. So now we're on a slightly steeper section with some ruts. We'll get a little bit articulated. Nothing like what we do on our more serious trails, but it's enough to make this car slip. And we've noticed that there's a lot of crossovers that really do not like getting articulated, and this still seems to be trudging along. Now, it's gonna be hard to tell on video. This hill is steep. I'm just looking at sky right now. You can hear wheel slip, but the all-wheel drive system manages to send power to the tires, even though they're street tires, and get us up to where we need to be.
So let's do a little bit of off-roading in the CX-5, see how it compares to the CX-50. Now, I do have this little selector here, MI Drive, and I can engage in off-road mode, which is pretty cool. And then even better than that, over here to the left of the steering wheel, push the camera view button, and you get front-facing cameras, rear-facing cameras, and even a side profile so you can see where the wheels and tires are. I think that camera thing is pretty darn clever. The CX-5 signature is 7.9 inches of ground clearance. Not a lot of ground clearance, and we're rolling on a big wheel, a 19-inch wheel with Toyo all-season tires, so not exactly what you want for off-roading, but we'll give it a go anyways. We're down here in Andre's pit at the Tumbleweed Ranch test facility, and currently under construction actually while we build out some designated trails, but we'll go ahead and try to see if we can climb out of here. Now, good thing about this vehicle, unlike a lot of the competitors from Hyundai and Kia, it does have a true torque converter automatic transmission, which should help on the climb out of here. Now, this probably is not going to look very steep on camera, but in person, it's kind of gnarly. Just taking it nice and slow. We are going to scrape this bush on the underside just a little bit. Alright, that's probably 20-25 degrees. I'm going to head and bring the vehicle to a stop, and let's see if we can accelerate out of here. This is where a dual clutch would have a lot of problems. But that 6-speed automatic combined with the turbo meant we crawled out with no difficulty. However, I wouldn't want to do much more than that, to be brutally honest with you, because the signature has those really pretty elegant looking body colored side moldings. I think you could start to get yourself in trouble pretty quickly, especially with a lack of underbody protection. All right, just for giggles, we'll try it one more time, take a slightly more difficult line at it. Crawl up the really steep portion here. See if we can get it off camber just a little bit. See how the ground clearance is. Moving off our little route, pointing right up this hill. Gosh, there's so much power from that turbocharged engine. I did get a little bit of wheel spin, but I clamped down on the brake hard and we crawled on out.
The CX-50 will be produced right here in the US in Huntsville, Alabama at a starting price of $26,800. However, if you want a nice premium plus turbo model like what you see here, that's going to run you, before options, $41,550.
This CX-5 signature, as you see it equipped behind me, $39,875. Now the starting price is a little bit less than the CX-50. That model's just a little bit more expensive, but I have to say, I'd probably go for the CX-50. I just love the design. I love kind of the rugged nature of the vehicle. Sure, you don't get the sophisticated rear suspension like the CX-5, but I don't know. I just think it looks really fantastic. Now let me know what you think in the comment section below. As always, thank you so much to Kase, all the way out in sunny California. We'll see you in the next video.